Martin, it's me. I'm pretty sure I put a colour catcher in. No idea what you're talking about. No, I don't want to watch that anymore. 7 series and find out they're dead. No, I'm watching something else. No, it's 5 games for Doomsday. It's kind of like a mixture of bad focusing, despair, and complete attention seeking. No. I'm only watching it because it's the kind of car crash tale you're expecting him to kind of like have a breakdown at any minute, so that's what I'm looking out for. Yeah, he's got candles in that. Yeah, it's brilliant. No, I'm not going to subscribe. How do you spell it? It's simple. It's 5 games for Doomsday. Goodness me. No, I'll be about half hour late. Yeah. Alright then. Toodaloo.
So welcome back to another 10 minutes of questioning my taste. The vibrant back and forth of opinions is what the free market of ideas is all about. Also, I understand shyness, so trust me. If you feel the need to compliment my tan or the mellifluous timbre of my voice, I promise I won't mind. Embrace your urges, especially if they're the kind of urges that give me an ever so fleeting sense of self-worth. Just looking at the spine of this game on my shelf drenches me in the melancholy felicity of nostalgia. To pull this game out is to fire me back to those early days of this new thing I'd found. I bought this on a whim at my first Essen, and so to think of Spyrium is to think of crisp mornings walking to the underground, or fuzzy-brained nights waiting for the bus to take me back to the hotel. That's not to say the game isn't great, though. It really is a dynamic worker placement game that blew open strategy games for me when I first played it. It's so expertly constructed, it allows the players to build a beautiful machine, piece by piece and round by round. I still play this game, and I still remember being soaked in beer, thumbing through the rulebook in some guy's flat in Essen when I barely knew anyone. Every time I play this game, I think back to those times, and I smile. This game will definitely take its place in my top 10 one day, but as I've only played it twice, it'll have to live with number 19 for the moment. It's like the first time I read Wolf Hall or watched High and Low. The first time I played Age of Steam, I realised I was incredibly fortunate to be living in these times, because it gave me the opportunity to witness greatness. For a game that's relatively simple, there are Marianas Trench levels of depth, football hooligan levels of contention, and Napoleonic levels of strategy. From the second you start playing, you're almost blinded by its brilliance. This game is one of the pillars on which board gaming rests, and for a very good reason. Age of Steam is a masterpiece. I miss pubs, the dirty carpets, the farmers dripping silage, popping in for a pint of mild in between ploughing the upper field and going off to make bulls into bullocks. I live in Europe now, and although they try, there's some indefinable something that any pub outside of Britain just doesn't get right. If I was going to the pub regularly, though, I'd be playing a lot more Skull. It just feels like a classic barroom game. It has devastatingly simple rules and devilish gamesmanship. It has spectator value and promotes the kind of ribbing that is the fuel for friendship. Also, it gets better the more you drink. As your head gets muggier, your faith in your own ability grows and you become headstrong and foolish. Skull is a game that puts you out in front of your opponent and asks you to test yourself. Skull is an exercise in hubris control, and if you can control that hubris in front of an open fire, with a gentle hum of red-faced boozers talking arse in the background, well then you've completed gaming. This is simply a glorious piece of design from one of the best designers around. You move your boat, you take some stuff, or you move your worker, and that's it. And yet from that, you get the best 2 hours that you can spend. This game is an edifice that has been rigorously planned. There are none of the follies or carbuncles that heavier games carry around. This is a restrained piece of design that elegantly guides you through the experience. Already a classic when I first played it, it was one of the few things in life that I could see what all the fuss was about. There's a feeling of a real journey here as you're taken through the development of the port. Scarcity becomes comfort and then becomes abundance, and by the end, you really feel like you've built something. If only life could be like that. What a debut! This game feels as big and ambitious as the city that shares its name. This game puts you expertly into the minds of the early robber barons of American industry. This is before all the statues and college endowments, before the sepia-toned elegies to the American dream. City of the Big Shoulders tells the story of the truly free market. It tells the story of the mountains that were built on the sweat of those the mountains would go on to crush. It explores what happens when greed is encouraged and those in charge are removed from the people who work for them. It tells us how people were dispensable, like the products they produced and how they still are. One function of art is to put us into the shoes of the truly despicable so we can explore that despicableness and prevent it. If ever a game like City of the Big Shoulders were needed, it's now. I'm not sure we'll learn the lessons that it teaches, but we can all hope. Chaos in the Old World is one of those wonderful games that rides the knife edge the whole time. There's never any real indication to who's winning, and any faction could sweep in at any time and snare the victory. There's real variation in the playstyle of the gods in this game, and there's a real joy in cracking open strategies that feel wholly yours. It also captures the dark, comic and cringeably adolescent world of the Warhammer universe perfectly. For all of its grisly stylings and sadistic overlays, everything is tremendously silly, and Chaos in the Old World delivers a concentrated dose of that. In the old world of map-based combat games, there's nothing to rival it. I'm just glad I got a copy while it was still in print. I loved the school fete. Piled up bales of hay, miles of bunting and those terribly carved wooden skittles that barely stood up. I never did guess how many beans were in the jar, but I did win a bottle of pomaine one year. They also would have a tug-of-war contest. That's where the beer-bellied dads would strain their red faces until one of them fell over. I was never interested in the tug-of-war. Well, that was until I played this game, of course. Dogs of War is a game of coercion and begging. It's a game of runaway victories and cutting your losses. This is the big brother of Blitzkrieg that throws in the biggest element of chaos you can find. More people. Your best friend this round might be your mortal enemy next as you jockey and vie for position. If you want a game that is a factory of faux recrimination, well then it's Dogs of War. If you want a game that might just be the most fun you've ever had, well then it's Dogs of War. How did I not play this game for so long? For years this game was just reputation for me, the shining monument on the hill that I'd always managed to avoid. But when I played it though, everything became clear. The opinions of groups can often be fatally wrong. It's not this way with Castles of Burgundy though. This is everything a game should be. Rapier sharp design with a UI that makes you say, you mean I just do that? Yet rolling some dice and taking some stuff opens up the labyrinth of options that hum under the bonnet of this game. The design of this game leaves me scratching my head as to how someone could devise something so quietly audacious. Castles of Burgundy is a modest game that shines with a simple brilliance that puts many other less rigorous games into the deepest of shades. There's no doubt that Stefan Feld has left a mark on the world, and that mark is Castles of Burgundy. Rainer Knizia knows people. He knows how to take the smallest amount of rules possible and marshal them to one end. That is to give players ownership of their own experience. High society is the encapsulation of this. Whether the game is cagey or conservative or it spirals out of control is completely in the hands of the players. We should play games, not feel games are playing us, and Knizia is the king of this. Also, that rule that condemns the most profligate player to the dustbin is one of the most brutal ideas that lends every play of every card peril. There is game design, then there is genius. And it only takes one play of high society to see on which side of the fence it sits. Life is a path of binary choices. You make a decision at one gate which barrels you down a corridor until you reach another gate, and then you choose again, and then on until you get smushed. That is no thanks. Take a card, or don't, until you get smushed. This game is so simple, and yet it tells us so much about the import of our daily decision process that it reaches baffling levels of profundity. This is a game that revels in the depth of simplicity. Every creative act should aspire to this, to be as simple as possible and no more. The brain-twisting agony of being confronted by one simple decision. There's nothing extraneous here, no indulgence, just the expert deployment of rules that explode like bombs when they come into contact with people. I aspire to this level of skill. What a bastard aspirations are. So we hit the top 10. I hope that you're happy that your assumption that I'm an idiot has been fully realised. Also, I just want to remind you that these set of videos were made possible by the support of my patrons. You can become one too by clicking the link in the box. And I don't want to harp on about this, but you really should subscribe. Imagine the look on your faces when I become dictator of the world and you're all hanged because you're not a part of the cool group.